Welcome back. Hey, Technical Brad here. Okay, so we're going to start a little project here with our David Brown Selectomatic 880. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of upgrades to the vehicle. This is a 1966 version of the David Brown 880. The 880 ran from 61 to 71. And in 1965, they did a design change of the 880. And the most notable thing is it went from being red, hunting red and primrose yellow as an accent, to being white, orchid white, and chocolate brown. Now, the orchid white, of course, is the sheet metal. The chocolate brown is primarily all the castings on it. And we restored this tractor, well, back in August of 21. We started dismantling it. We went through the winter. We came back to it in the spring, and we had it back together by the end of June of 2022. And it's worked quite well for us here. We haven't had really any issues with it. But we decided in the past winter that we were going to do a few upgrades on it. One of the upgrades we're going to do is we're going to add the cold start system to it. This particular model did not have that, and we're going to add that to it, as well as a couple other upgrades to it. And so we're going to take it apart partially. We're not going to do a complete tear down of it like we did a couple years ago, but we are going to dismantle some of the stuff. We already have the main frame and the bucket off of our FREEMAN loader. We still have our subframe on here, obviously, and we're going to have to take that apart and get that off of there so that we can get down to the actual vehicle itself. And that was one of the bad things about having the FREEMAN loader, is all of this stuff is so much in the way of just your regular maintenance. One of the things is the fuel filters down in here, which are tucked back behind this frame piece we have here. And so it made it kind of difficult to do just your basic maintenance of the vehicle. But anyway, we're going to tear into this. Now what we've done is we have removed, like I said, the main frame. It has the hydraulic cylinders on it and all of that. We still have the pump, which is mounted in the front. It's still attached and plumbed in there. We will be removing that as well. We've got to take these cross braces off and then get this frame piece off. But what we did is we unhooked the hydraulic parts up here at our valve body. Now this is not a modern quick connect system. This is a modern valve. I did replace this a year or so ago. But what we had to do is we actually had to unscrew the fittings out of the top of our work ports here, and we put plugs in all 6 of the ports, even this one back here. And the reason we did that is obviously you don't want dirt getting down inside your valve body there, and you know that would be detrimental to the hydraulics itself. And also this is a flow-through system, and the reason it is because it has a gear-driven pump. So with a gear pump you have constant oil flow through it, and it creates constant, whenever the pump's turning, it's moving the oil. And so this valve body is set up to where the oil comes in back here at this connector, and it passes through all 3, we have now spool valves, to the exit, and then returns back into our tank down here. So if you didn't plug these things, you would have oil coming out of that. It wouldn't be at the 2000 psi that the pump generates, but it would squirt out of there a bit and make a mess. So we capped everything off, keep it clean, and keep the oil inside. And so the next step we're going to do is we're going to remove the FREEMAN loader, the yellow parts here. Now we don't have to remove our mounting bracket, which is right up here. There's one here, and then there's one down below behind the tire here. We can't see it. We will leave those on the vehicle, but we will take the rest of the yellow parts off the FREEMAN loader. And yeah, we'll start doing some dismantling on this here in the next few days and get down into the nitty-gritty of it, and hopefully come up with some pretty decent videos on it. And we will do all that when we come back. Welcome back. Okay, so we took the front guard off of the FREEMAN loader, and it's sitting over here. It just has 2 bolts, one on either side of it there, that mounted into the front of the frame right here. on either side. And I replaced all the bolts back a couple years ago when we did the restoration on Brownie. But one thing I did, gosh, probably 15 years ago now, our front bonnet, or the hood as we may call it, used to come all the way down, and this was all connected. And what I did is I cut it through here, and you can see it on this side really good. And I cut it all the way back. And I did it on both sides, even over here. And I cut it back, and now this piece is mounted and it stays on there. The reason for that is because, as we said earlier, the Freeman loader is not a quick connect type system. And it was very difficult to get the hood, you take the grill part off here, this orange part, very difficult to get this thing far enough forward to pass all this plumbing. And this pipe here used to be solid all the way over, and then it had a 45 here, and there was a short piece of rubber hose that connected the two together back in here. Well, that thing, you'd have to bring it all the way up so it would squeeze through this dimension here. And it made it very, very difficult to get this bonnet on or off. And so I was having trouble, I think, with the fuel pump way back when. And so I decided, you know what, when I get the hood off, I'm going to cut it and I'm going to retrofit that so that we can get it off. Now, you still have to remove this front guard area because you have to pull the thing forward a bit to get it off of there. And I'm going to show you what the attachments are here inside, and we will do that when we come back. So if we take our front cover off here, we got two little snaps. Pop that off. And that comes loose like so. And we'll set him over here by the bicycle. Yeah, the bicycle. And we can't see. As we look down in here, you've got wing nuts on either side. Now those, you loosen those up, and then you slide the bonnet forward, and it has to come out past this end right here. So you got to pull it forward an inch or so just to clear this. Now you can take that all the way off, but it's easier just to loosen it up. There's a couple of rubber grommets on there that kind of buffer the hood, you know, with the vibrations and everything. But that was the reason that I did that upgrade on it back then, because it made it a lot easier to get the system, the hood, the bonnet off of the vehicle. And you know, if you're working on, depending on what you're working on, sometimes you don't have to take the bonnet off. You can change the filters, for example, whether it be the fuel filters on this side or the oil filter over here on the other side, down in yonder there. You can do that without taking the hood off. But there are some things you need to do to service this thing that you got to take that hood off. And so that made it a lot more easy to take the hood off and have that separate piece down below. Welcome back. Okay, so we took our two hoses off. Now this is our pressure line. This is what sends the pressure out of the pump over to our valve body. This just has a swivel connector here, and the two screw together, and you know, break that loose and take it apart. That's relatively simple. This one is just a slip-on, just slides on there, and then you got a band clamp back here that tightens it down. So relatively simple there. And next thing we'll do is we'll pull the pump out. And I think we've showed this before. Yeah, there's a bolt. There's two bolts that hold this bracket on. And what you've got is one there and then one there. And then of course that's the shaft going back through the radiator into the hub. So you take those two bolts out, I believe they're 5/8, and then the pump assembly, you kind of lift it up, pull it forward, and it just slides out of there. So we will do that when we come back. So we've got our bolts out. Now, removing this is relatively easy, but it is kind of heavy. So what we're going to do is we grab a hold of it here. We got to pull it forward slightly and then up, and it releases from our spline in the back. Now putting it back together is more difficult because that 10 spline has to match up with what the hub is on the other side, which of course you cannot see later. Originally, when this tractor was new without the loader, the battery was mounted inside here. And David Brown was known for putting their batteries in front of the radiators, which they claimed would keep them cooler because of the air being pulled through the radiator. And it kept them away from all the oils and stuff, although the early version, we've got our reservoir up here for our power steering. So if you had the power assist steering, yeah, you had a container of oil sitting above it. And also the breather here for our air filter. This is an oil bath system for the air cleaner system we have on here. So that was above it too, but so I guess it wasn't so much for oil then, was it? But anyway, when they did the FREEMAN loader, it has an independent hydraulic system, so they put the pump up here and they moved the battery over to the side right there. They made that big cage put on there, and that's actually where the toolbox originally was mounted. And they moved the toolbox over to the fender and mounted it onto the fender. So that's just a little bit of history of the 880, Dad's 880, as it were. Welcome back. Okay, so got our front end off. We're taking our cross pieces off. Now we have this one on the top, goes over to the other side, and we have this one down at the bottom, runs straight across over to the other side. These are pretty much straightforward. We got a bolt on here. If we can get to it. I can't get this socket on. There we go. And these are just spacer bars. They keep it all lined up so that it operates properly. And I replaced all the bolts back when we did the restoration, 21-22 restoration. So we got that one. Now that one's loose because I've already taken it loose from the other side. And then we got this one. Now this one isn't that big of a deal either. It's right here, 3/4 inch bolt. Now as you notice, I have a towel laying up here on the tractor. The reason is once this loosens up, it generally will fall one direction or another, because see, when it's loose, now it can move. There we go, and lay it down. So you definitely want to put protection up here. You don't want that smacking in and scratching anything up. So we will go ahead. Hello. And we'll go ahead and take this off of here. Just like so. All right, put this on the tire here, and I'll put the bolts back in the holes. And just like that, pop it out of there. Now, as you can see, yeah, we're not real stable, are we? So that is the whole thing about the stabilization braces in there. So now we've got two bolts here, down in here, under that hose. See them from the other side here. Two bolts that hold it on down in here. Right there, right there. And then there's a pin in the back mount back there. We'll pop that pin out, take those two bolts out, get the crane in here, and yeah, we'll do all that when we come back. Okay, so we have our pin removed. This is the pin that goes into the back mount. We have our bolts removed from in here, and well, those are the bolts we put in there from this bracket here. what we're going to do is we're going to lift this thing up with the shop crane. We got to back it out this way so that we clear our back mount. So we back it up and then we got to swing it out around the tire and take it out of the way. So all right, so back during the original restoration, I made these little A-frame stands here to mount on to my framing here, my subframes. That way it would hold it. If you don't, it's front heavy, it'll fall down. And you can lay it completely down on its side, which this one's no trouble, but the other one has the oil reservoir in it, and so it's got oil in it. We're not going to drain it out on this one, but even if you drained it out, you're still going to have oil in there, and yeah, that ends up being quite a mess. So that's how we do that. We're going to go ahead and get hooked up on the other side, and we'll get that one taken apart and bring it over here as well. Welcome back. Hey, Technical Brad here. Okay, well, you know, it's amazing how different the vehicle looks without the Freeman loader on it. And so we got it off. It took about, I don't know, probably 2.5 hours, the whole thing together. You could probably take it off in a couple hours, 2.5 hours or so. It's currently about 95 degrees out here and hotter than hell, really. But so anyway, we got it off, and yeah, I'm amazed at how the vehicle looks without the loader on it. When I did that back in August of 21, that was the first time that I'd ever had the loader off of it. Now, I had taken off each side. I left the main frame on, unhooked it from the cylinders, all that, and I pulled them off and welded on them. And that was back in the probably 98, 99. This building we're in was new back in 97. So it was around that time. And so I did weld on, but I had them off one side at a time. I never had the whole thing off until August of 21. And it's pretty wild driving it without the thing on there. The front end is a lot lighter, bounces around quite a bit. But yeah, it sits a lot different. Looks a lot different. And so we'll be ready to continue here now as time goes on with the projects we have at hand. And yeah, looking forward to it.